Margaret Evans covered a war zone with many sides: Russia, the U.S., Turkey, the Damascus regime, Iran, and also the Kurds. Scattered across the Middle East, the Kurds are considered the world's largest ethnic group without a state. A struggle for independence has marked Kurdish history for decades in Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. And Donald Trump could change their fate, if you believe his words.
You said Kurdish, the Kurdish people. We should be using the Kurdish. We should be arming the Kurdish.
Throughout his campaign, one of the few parts of Middle East policy Donald Trump seemed clear on was support for the Kurds.
I thought you said Kurds.
No. Kurds.
I'm sorry. I thought you said Kurds. Because I think the Kurds have been very poorly treated by us here.
And now that he's elected, the Kurds in Iraq and Syria may have fresh hope for their dreams of independence. That is, if they ignore Team Trump's equally ardent support of Turkey.
There was an op-ed published by the incoming National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn, where he basically said Turkey is an important ally to have. So again, the Trump administration knows very well the chessboard of the region.
The chessboard looks like this. Right now, Turkey is cracking down on its own Kurdish population, facing bombings from suspected Kurdish militants, as it does everything it can to counter Kurdish gains in Syria.
The Turks are upset that Washington is using an entity that the Turks consider as a terrorist organization, and they're not willing to tolerate a Kurdistan on their southern flank.
But the Kurds in Iraq and especially Syria have been indispensable in the fight against ISIS. In a region riven by religious violence, their ideology is secular. In the chaos of Syria, they are imposing a different order.
Each time they liberate a village, they have a meeting with the inhabitants of the village and they elect 2 mayors, 1 man and 1 woman. They're trying to do a secular region in which all the religious minorities are respected and everybody, can live in peace. Of course, this is on paper and during wartime. We will have to see what happens during peacetime.
In wartime, Kurdish men and women have both proven themselves.
I embedded a lot with the one fighters. Honestly, I was so fascinated by the way you worked from a gender point of view, but also from a military point of view, and how good they were, and how, I'm a war correspondent, and I never felt so protected in my life like with them.
But for the U.S. now, support for Kurds is less about equality and more about geography.
They're geographically located on the front lines of the fight against ISIS in Syria. They are the ones geographically in position to mount an assault, in theory, on Raqqa, the capital of ISIS's so-called caliphate. That's the reason why the outgoing administration was interested in deploying the Kurds. That is why the incoming administration is also considering the idea.
They have great heart, they're great fighters, and we should be working with them much more so than we're working.
Trump's message is actually typical. Kurds are used to being used and discarded. A Kurdish proverb is that they have no friends but the mountains.
No friends but the mountains come from many, many years of fighting and being disappointed of the outcome of that fight. The Kurds, after fight, they would go up the mountains and get refuge there.
With Turkey pushing into Syria, bombing Kurdish forces at will, the U.S. stands between them and the proverbial mountains.
Frankly speaking, the United States could care less about a Kurdistan anywhere. The reality is, personalities, new presidents, new parties in power work with the same problem, same narrow menu of options that their predecessors were dealing with. At the end of the day, the Kurds are a short-term interest. In the long run, it's Turkey, 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 Turkey.
Which means the Kurds will watch Trump, hearing a promise, but prepared for betrayal.